4 years had passed since Emma's arrival at the colony, and Carrie was now facing her own inquisition. The Dobbs' petition was assigned to Judge Shackelford, the same judge who had sent Emma away. The commission of feeble-mindedness that heard Carrie's case was made up of Judge Shackelford and two Charlottesville medical doctors who he had appointed, Dr. J.F. Williams and Dr. J.C. Kultur, who was the Dobbs' family physician. In their petition, John and Alice Dobbs said they had taken care of Carrie since she was 3 or 4, and she had not developed symptoms of being feeble-minded or epileptic until she was 10 or 11 years of age. Carrie's symptoms grew progressively worse, and she became, quote, so affected that they could, quote, no longer care for her. Though it should not have been relevant to the commission. The Dobbs said their only income was Mrs. Dobbs' salary, and they were no longer able to care for Carrie financially. The Dobbs submitted interrogatories with some information about Carrie's condition. Taken together, the petition and interrogatories presented a picture that bore little relation to the truth. The Dobbs said Carrie was feeble-minded, but that was contradicted by the academic records, which showed that she had reached the 6th grade with generally good grades and comportment before the Dobbs pulled her out of school. As to her medical condition, when asked at what age was any mental peculiarity first noticed, the Dobbs wrote, since birth, even though they only knowed Carrie since age 4. Their answer to the question, at what age did epilepsy first appear, was, quote, since childhood. But they answered no when asked, is she now, or has she ever been subject to epilepsy, headaches, nervousness, fits, or convulsions of any kind? The Dobbs offered no medical or school records to support their claim that Carrie suffered from epilepsy. Years later, when Carrie was released from the colony, the superintendent, a doctor who had observed her closely for years, would flatly state, she is not an epileptic. There was no more to the story than the Dobbs were willing to omit. There was no more to the story than the Dobbs were telling the commission. In their petition, they did not mention that Carrie was pregnant or how her condition had come about. Alice's nephew, a young man named Clarence Garland, had come to visit the previous summit. During the visit, Carrie later said, Clarence forced himself upon me. According to Carrie, the pregnancy that Alice Dobbs had blamed on Carrie not being trustworthy had actually been a result of rape. I mean, go figure, honestly. Carrie was a sexually inexperienced young woman at the time of the attack. She played with neighborhood boys, she later recalled, but did not date any of them. I didn't run around, she said. I wasn't allowed to. She insisted, a good girl. Carrie said that after Clarence forced himself on her, he promised he would marry her, but he instead left Charlottesville. Carrie's condition put the Dobbses in a difficult position. Pregnancy outside of marriage carried a considerable stigma, and having Carrie remain in the household would be an embarrassment for the Dobbs family. The situation was made far worse by Carrie's account of being attacked. If she went public with her story, Clarence would be charged with rape. Those stories might be solved. Those problems might be solved, however, if Carrie were quickly and permanently sent away. In the 1920s, it was not difficult to have someone like Carrie institutionalized as feeble-minded. The nation was in the midst of the panic of feeble-mindedness. The feeble-minded, however, the term was defined, were regarded as a burden on government and private charity, a menace to public safety, and a threat to the national gene pool. The Survey, an influential social workers journal, editorialized that all of the matters facing state governments, none is more pressing than the care of the feeble-minded, who involve every social problem. The Georgia Department of Public Welfare was blunt in warning about the feeble-minded. What shall it profit Georgia, the department asked in a report, if we stop the loss from the boll weevil and fail to stamp out the germs of degeneracy and delinquency that eat out the heart of the human family itself? States that have been building institutions at a rapid rate and sending the feeble-minded away in record numbers. In 1904, 17.3 feeble-minded people were institutionalized for every 100,000 people in the population. By 1921, the number had nearly tripled to 46.7. The main purpose of this drive to institutionalize in state hospitals and specialized schools for the feeble-minded was not care or training. It was to remove the group deemed to be a threat and to segregate them. Lock them up in secure facilities where they could not reproduce. The ultimate aim of the school, said the head of the newly established North Carolina School for the Feeble-Minded, is the elimination of feeble-mindedness from the race by segregation. Many factors were working against Carrie at her commission of feeble-mindedness inquisition, starting with the fact that she was a woman. The campaign against feeble-mindedness was focused on young women who were deemed both a moral and a demographic threat. The medical establishment had long been sounding the alarm. Dr. Walter E. Fernald of Massachusetts, a leading authority, cautioned that feeble-minded women are almost invariably immoral, and if at large, usually become carriers of venereal disease or give birth to children who are defective as themselves. Oof. Hastings Hart, the director of the Russell Sage Foundation Child Development Division, warned states that feeble-minded girls were vastly more dangerous to the community than feeble-minded boys, and recommended that every feeble-minded woman be faithfully segregated for 20 years.